service. My name is Jill Tucker. I'm the CEO of Cal Animals. Most of you know me, but we do have people joining today from actually all around the world, which is pretty exciting for us, and including people from other states that found this through the association webpage, as well as our member, I think, in Guam. And we do want to let you know that Cal Animals does accept members from other states if you are interested in joining us to take advantage of trainings. So welcome. We're happy to have you here today. Gina Knepp is our speaker today, and she is the National Shelter Engagement Director for Michelson Found Animals Foundation, after retiring from her position as the Animal Care Services Manager for the Front Street Animal Shelter, City of Sacramento. At the Front Street Shelter, she led a massive turnaround, dramatically increasing life-saving and improving community engagement. She is no stranger to both public relations and handling challenging conversations, as her background also includes 311 and 911 management. We are super excited to have Gina here today to share insights into truly serving our customers well. So welcome, Gina.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you all for being here. We're going to start out real quick. Yes, I do have two black eyes. It was a great bar fight. You should see the other guy. Not true. Not really. But anyways, I'm excited to do this session. I'm going to turn my video off because I always look at my little bobblehead going up and down while I present. But when we come back to Q&A, if we have time, I'll come back in real life. I wish we were doing this in real life. How come I can't make myself go away? Really? Jill, can you still hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
I kind of got frozen there for a minute. That would have really been ugly because it was not a good picture at all. Okay. There we go. Let's see if I can move some of this crap that's up there. It's the best I got. Hopefully that won't bother anybody. Customer service, it is not just please and thank you. I promise you that today, even though we might cover some routine components of customer service training, hopefully this will be very different for you. This is me. If you'll note, there is an arrow pointing to my dog's ID tag because that is really my focus in the industry. That's what I do at Michelson is lost pet reunification, but that is not what we're going to talk about today. But I always have to throw that in there. Do not have naked animals in your presentations. I'm available to help you. There's my email and my personal cell phone. Feel free to take a screenshot. I have some goals for today. Namely, I want you to learn something new. Next, I want you to take that thing that you learned and go share it with somebody else. If you just hold on to it, it's not going to do you any good all by yourself. Customer service, in my opinion, is a team effort. Hopefully we'll laugh a little. I'm very good at laughing at myself. And then I want you to reflect over the next few days after this session and think about your own personal customer service style, not just yours, but your organization as a whole. Are you doing really, really well? Maybe you are, but I don't think that there's any one of us out there, myself included, that's perfect. There's always an opportunity to massage or modify how we do things, especially consistently as a team. And I want you to just humor me real quick. I'm not going to be able to see this until later because I've got full screen going, but give me one sentence in the chat that describes what customer service means to you. I'm hoping that at the end, we can glance at that. Maybe all of you will be glancing at it while I'm talking, and we can see, do we align or don't we? So take a second and write down just a sentence. What does customer service mean to you? Okay, I see the little chat going. Perfect. And while you're doing that, I think it's important for the speaker or the trainer to kind of qualify themselves as an expert in this industry. And I want to go back to my career at 911. While I was there, I developed customer service training for 911 dispatchers in the state of California. And probably with my co-trainer, probably taught, I don't know, maybe 500 customer service dispatchers in the entire state. And they would always say to us, well, when I started working in that industry, you have to treat people like it's every caller is your mother. And I don't have a good relationship with my mother. So if you don't like your mother, that would be a bad analogy, right? So start with a different premise. Start with, who do you love the most in the whole entire world? And I know you're answering that, what does customer service mean to me? But either put it in the chat or write yourself a note. Who is the person that you love the most in the whole wide world? For me, who would I die for? It's my daughter, not my husband, not anybody else, but just my daughter, Ruby. I love her more than life itself. So start there. And it doesn't matter how much training you have. It doesn't matter how well your parents did raising you. How you treat other people is a personal choice. Conversely, and also similarly, how you treat yourself, how you take care of yourself is a personal choice. So start with the notion that the person you love the most in life is the recipient of your service, or the recipient of the service provided by your organization. It's a good placeholder. I want you to think about this person as we go through this session. Next, so what's your organizational culture? And I do have words on my slides, but I don't read them to you because I think you all know how to read. But most importantly, your organizational culture is your personality. I think everything good about what we do stems from the culture of our organization. Regardless, I don't care where you are on the org chart, you have some control over the personality of your organization, but along with control, you also have responsibility. But I do believe that utmost responsibility for the personality and the character of the business, and this is a business, folks, we don't like to think about it that way, but it is. It starts at the top of the organization. Unfortunately, and I shouldn't say that, but fortunately, maybe the boss person bears a lot of the responsibility for this. So if you're on this call and you're the boss at work, and I don't mean just the CEO, but a supervisor, a leader over a section, maybe you're the volunteer coordinator in charge of overseeing and guiding other people in the organization. But if you're the boss person and you're on this call, I don't want you to feel any pressure. None at all. But it truly is up to you to create a climate of incredible customer experience, both internally and externally. But don't stress too much about that, because hopefully you have amazing people on your team that are there, ready and willing to help you. So how about we think about it this way? Goodness, what does Tinder, if those of you that don't know, Tinder is an online or a dating app, which I am way too old to ever have used, thank God. But what does this have to do with customer service? And I love analogies that help people make sense of nonsensical things. So let's pretend you were on Tinder and stumbled across your shelter on this site. And on Tinder, you either swipe to the right if you like something or swipe to the left if you don't. And you don't have to meet that person if you swipe to the left. And just so you know, Tinder does work because my daughter met her husband on Tinder 8 years ago and they're still together. So it does work. So anyway, you're on Tinder, you're looking at all the possible places that you could date. Your shelter pops up. Would you swipe to the right for your organization? Again, rhetorically here, I want you to pretend you're a regular person, okay? You're a customer, which I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. Would you date you based on the culture, the personality of your organization? Okay, again, I do a lot of rhetorical questions. I don't want you to answer them out loud. I want you to think about them in your head. So you're a regular person, a customer, and you walk into the front doors of your shelter to visit the dogs. You're thinking about adopting. So what's your first, shut your eyes, think about your lobby. What's your first impression? Did somebody greet you? Did somebody ask you what you might need or hoping to accomplish that day? Did somebody offer to help you? Was the lobby clean? I mean, let's start there. Was it inviting? How about when you walk through the kennels? Are there loads of poop and dirty water bowls, or are things neat and tidy? Are there other volunteers and staff wandering around offering to help people that are walking through, most of the time lost? Are people smiling? Does the cat adoption smell like piss, or is it pristine? This is customer service too. It is everything about us, everything. A long time ago, I had a friend in 911. His name was Aaron Donato. And he said to me, if you look like a duffel bag, you'll act like a duffel bag. And that's kind of true. I mean, do you wear your uniform with pride? Do you have your name tag on every day if your organization requires it? Or did you roll out of bed this morning, shove your hair into a bun, throw on your scrubs, and go to work without even washing your face? Don't answer that, because I know we've all done it. And what about those phone calls that we take? Those are even harder because you can't see your customer. And all they have to go on most of the time is what you sound like and the choice of your words. Can they hear you smile? Did you call them by name? Did you ask them, is there anything else I can help you with today? Or did you answer that phone first off by giving them your name? All of that really matters. Customer service is not just about how we treat people when we speak to them. It's about every aspect of our organization. It's all the tiny details. They do all matter. So, and I'm not going to do a Disney presentation here, but most of you, I would presume, have been to Disneyland, the big one or the little one. Anyway, Disney calls the part of our work, the back of the house, and we use this at Front Street a little bit before I left, and it did resonate with people. The back of the house is the term that we use for all the behind the scenes stuff that the customers never see. I mean, this could be the break room. Maybe it's the surgical suite. Maybe it's the euthanasia room or some office that a customer's never going to go into. How we treat each other in the back of the house is just as important as the front of the house. Actually, I think it's more important. Think about your own shelter and your own break room. Again, these are rhetorical questions. Do not answer them in the chat and don't raise your hand. But is your break room neat and tidy? Are the tables wiped down regularly? I mean, I would imagine that most of us do not have full-time maids tending to our break rooms. And each one of us is expected to clean up after ourselves. And if your break room was anything like our break room in Sacramento, it was a constant struggle. Is this customer service? It's absolutely coworker respect. It's the back of the house. And we don't have to like everybody that we work with, but we absolutely have to respect each other. We all know this. We spend more waking hours with our coworkers than we do with our families. So the culture of the organization is where excellent customer service begins. It does begin with how we treat each other. It does begin with what we say behind each other's backs. I can't emphasize that enough. If we are not taking care of one another as an organization, as a work family, how do we expect to be any good at taking care of the animals, or God help us, the humans that we come into contact with during the course of our work? And some of you may know this, but organizational cultures, it's one of the top drivers of job satisfaction. It's one of the elements which has the greatest impact on employee retention. And when employees are satisfied with their organizational culture, with the personality of their organization, 77% of them tend to stay, whereas 24% tend to stay when they're dissatisfied. And I know that a lot of our turnover has to do with we can't pay the same amount of money that other places can pay, but people will stay for a bit less money if they love their coworkers and they love what they do for a living. And how we treat one another at work has a lot to do with customer satisfaction. First off, I need to say that I probably violated some copyright. This photo credit is the Associated Press. It is at some ball game. I'll tell you in a minute what this guy is up to. But imagine this is you, and you are falling. You're on the phone with a customer and you are not having a good day. Or you're at that front counter and you're with the most difficult customer of the century. I mean, you're losing it. You feel yourself losing it. Or maybe you're an ACO and you're out in the field trying to confiscate somebody's dog. The whole time that owner's berating you. Heck, you're a government worker, right? He says, we pay your salary. You just want to take your catch pole and bop that sucker over the head. In all of these cases, let's imagine that there is a coworker standing nearby, watching and listening. Now put yourself in the shoes of that observing coworker. You can see your colleague that your colleague's in trouble or they're going to be in trouble. You can see it, you can feel it. You're watching them go down the rabbit hole of bad customer service. What are you going to do? We all owe it to each other to step in. And there has to be a code, like a secret word or a code. You know, when someone's zipper is down, we all hope that someone's going to tell us so we don't walk around all day with that or that piece of spinach in our teeth. We have to make a commitment to each other to take care of each other when things are going south. And maybe that's, you know, at the front counter, Mary walks up to Susan and says, Susan, you have an urgent phone call. Let me take over here for you. And y'all know ahead of time that that's your secret code. There's hopefully 2 ACOs in the field at that call. That's not always going to be the case. But wouldn't you much rather hear that you were losing it from a coworker than from the boss? And we owe it to each other. We owe it to each other to step in and offer help. If we don't, the whole organization suffers. Because when Mary offers terrible customer service, that customer doesn't go back home and tell 11 or 12 other people that Mary at the shelter was really mean to her. It's everybody at that shelter is awful. We owe it to each other. So anyways, this guy was trying to catch a ball and he's standing on this like ledge where the people put their drinks and stuff. And he trips and falls. What's ironic about this is a week earlier, this guy's father did the same thing, fell over the edge and died. So yes, that's a true story. Do we have any Ted Lasso fans out there? I hope we do. I can't see you all, otherwise I'd say give me a thumbs up or an emoji. But for those of you that haven't seen Ted Lasso, it's about this kind of dorky American from, I don't know, is it Ohio or Arkansas or someplace in the middle of America who gets hired to go to England and manage a British soccer team and his adventures in England with the team. And he's just kind of like a modern day Mr. Rogers. I just recently started it. I'm on season 2 and I absolutely love it. But there's all these TEDisms that have come out of it now. And I do like this one. And it does make me think about 2 employees taking care of each other at work. Because I think if you care about someone and you've got a little bit of love in your heart, there isn't anything that we can't get through together. So if you haven't watched TED yet, it's on Apple TV. Highly recommend. Then there's the Holly effect. I don't know if there's anybody on this call from Sacramento, but this is Holly. And I tried to get permission from her to do this. She did not answer my text. I probably have the wrong phone number. So if she sues me, please let her know that I said nice things about her. Holly is one of the most remarkable customer service experts I've ever met in my life. I mean, she's like, so she was a CSR, what we call customer service rep at Front Street when I worked there. And she had this uncanny ability to modulate her approach with every customer. And at first, she drove me nuts. I thought this girl was so unprofessional. And then I noticed that wasn't the case at all. I mean, she simply modified her approach depending upon the customer she was helping. And I don't know how she did it, frankly, but I think she deserves an Academy Award for, she was so intuitive in figuring out the best approach in most situations. I don't think she ever got a customer service complaint. People loved her. She was just really good at getting on the same wavelength as the customer. I mean, she could even speak what I called, Holly could speak inebriated. And we did have a lot of drunk people come in there. She was so incredibly good with people experiencing homelessness, with older people, even with the hoity-toity uppity person who just wrote us a check for $50 and thought they owned the shelter. She was just so good at it. So think about the people that you work with. Is there someone there that was born with like a golden customer service spoon in their mouth? Spend some time observing them. Find your Holly at work. Watch how they do it. Talk to them. Ask them for help. Extraordinary customer interactions come naturally for some people, but for most of us, it requires practice. So elevate the Hollies that you work with because they are unicorns, and let those unicorns teach the rest of us how to master the art of talking to people at work. I don't know if some of you have seen this before. I'm going to show you a quick video. Some things come naturally for some people, and that's the case in this video I stumbled upon most recently. Don't tell me that getting customer complaints in our industry is inevitable. After you watch this video about Elton Simmons, You can't say that anymore. If Elton can do it without complaints, so can we.
This is LA Sheriff's Deputy Elton Simmons, and I bet you don't like him already. Seeing him there, hiding in the shadows, why can't he go catch some real criminals, you may be thinking? Or no wonder he has a record number of complaints. Who wouldn't complain about a guy whose sole purpose in life is to ruin your day?
Go around the corner.
By the very nature of the business, all LA County traffic cops can expect to get at least a few complaints every year. A lot of them are petty, people just mad because they got a ticket. But regardless, they all get documented and placed in the officer's personnel file.
Which is why Captain Pat Maxwell was stunned when he started looking through Simmons' file.
I just said that's not possible.
Although he did see lots of commendations, looking back over the last 20 years, over the last 25,000 traffic stops, Captain Maxwell couldn't find one complaint. A record. 0.
I mean, Vegas or MIT could not give you the odds or the statistical probability of that.
Obviously, Elton is doing something right.
Yeah, it's got to be something.
Do you know what it is?
No.
No idea.
No.
Until the captain told him, Elton didn't even know he had such a record, let alone how he got it.
It's just how I do it every day.
So we trailed him for a day to see if we could figure out how he does it.
Yeah, what's going on? How you doing today, man?
First thing I noticed was that he has this pitch-perfect mix of authority
I need you to take care of that.
and diplomacy,
I don't want to keep pulling you over, though.
with none of the attitude that sometimes comes with a cop.
That's okay. That's good. Just be careful, all right? I'm here with you. I'm not up here. Because one thing I hate is to be looked down at. I can't stand it. So I'm not going to look down at you.
That's why, in lieu of a lecture, he gives most people the benefit of the doubt.
So it happens.
Of course, they still get the ticket,
It happens.
just not the guilt trip. And drivers seem to appreciate that.
You know, it's not that bad.
So much so that by the end, some are downright smitten.
You know what it is? Is his smile. Really? He's got a great smile.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You're giggling now. You just got a ticket.
I just got a ticket. He's a nice guy. I mean, you know, how can you be mad at that guy?
Apparently, you can't.
Disarming.
That's it, disarming. you
Time
know?
after time,
Very kind.
ticket after ticket.
Never so happy to get a ticket in my life.
We saw Officer Elton Simmons melt away a polar ice cap of preconceptions. And his boss says there's a lesson in there for hard-nosed traffic cops everywhere.
Their excuse is, well, I give tickets all day long. I'm going to get complaints. Well, that's not true.
There's a way.
There is a way to do it. And Elton Simmons is the way.
Certainly, no complaints here.
That is, to me, that's just the epitome of wow. What struck me, though, about that is that the supervisor had never notified Elton of all those commendations. Don't be that supervisor. If people are getting positive letters, comments, whatever, from customers, colleagues, we should be screaming it from the rooftop each and every single time. And here's where I promised we weren't going to do traditional customer service training, and we're not going to, but I would be really remiss if I didn't talk about the communication pie. It's super important for us to know the elements of communication, things over which we have control, and the most powerful of these things. So we're going to start with words. Words only make 7%, up 7% of the communication pie. Their impact on, the total perception of our communication. So do words matter? Maybe not as much as the other parts of the pie, but they do still matter. And maybe you're really good at the word part, the 7% of the pie part, and you should be using it to your advantage. But what kind of words am I talking about? A long time ago, someone taught me about the 12 most persuasive words in the English language, and here they are. You can Google them there, and this is probably something I learned 30 years ago or more. I am pretty old. But when you think about these words, when you're talking to customers, how can you intertwine them into conversations? So I took a stab at doing that. And it's so hokey. I'd love to help you save money by getting your dog or cat a new ID tag, blah, 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 blah. Put those 12 words on a piece of paper or sticky next to your desk. Maybe that's where you answer your phone, and think about how you can use them. The only one I really struggle with is discovery. So if one of you can figure out how to use discovery and weave it into our conversations in the animal welfare world, let me know. 12 most persuasive words of the English language. And Jill, I don't know if you want a PDF of this presentation, but I'm sure we can put it up on the special place where we put all of our learning stuff. I feel like I'm
Yes.
running out of time. Okay. All right. I like to recommend books when I teach. I highly recommend this book. It's called Talk, The Science of Conversation. I found it completely fascinating. If you're a geek like me and you want to know more about improving the talk experience, whether it's with your partner or with your people at work, I highly recommend. Let's go on to tone. Your tone of voice is more powerful than the actual words you use, which is one of the reasons I think Holly was so effective, because I think she had a high school education. Her words were not, 25-cent words. They were 10-cent words, but she used them really well. And you all know that you all know that tone you might use when you're nagging someone, your spouse, your kid, or the customer that irritates you, that tone you adopt. But better yet, you know that tone when you hear it and when it's being directed at you. But it's more than tone of voice, right? It's your tone is how you say something. There's fancier words for it, like inflection, tone of voice, intonation, whatever. But tone just isn't verbal. It's also written. Go back to your shelter websites and look at the tone of your content. If you're a government shelter, is it full of governmental bureaucratic gobbledygook? Could it be scary to someone that's reading it who has a mistrust of government to begin with? Is there a ton of jargon littered into your website content? Have you translated it into the most common foreign language spoken in your community? That's all tone too. And what about your email? Is there a generic email account that people write to at your shelter, the customers can write to, and that there's this auto response that comes back to them, telling them when they can expect to hear from you? Are you actually getting back to them when you told them you were going to? Same with voicemail boxes. All of that has to do with the tone of our customer service. And I could go on and on and on. Social media is another place that has tone. It has a style, it has a personality. But back to your verbal tone, insulting or rude tone of language, it's a lot like pornography. You know it when you see it, or you know it when you're on the receiving end of it. And there's no mistaking what that other person intends. So how do we work on our tone? Here's an example.
How would you describe your tone of voice, the attitude it projects? Other people assume that your tone communicates how you feel about them. Author Alan Weiner was once talking about this. He said, if you can easily finish a statement by naturally adding the phrase, "you dummy," you're using the wrong tone. Let's try it. I wanted that report this morning, you dummy. Why didn't you let me know, you dummy? If you want to build positive relationships, that's the wrong tone. So what is the right tone? Well, you can practice this. Pretend to ask somebody a question or give them a brief feedback statement. Aim for a tone that communicates respect, politeness, and professionalism. And when the phrase, "you dummy," no longer naturally fits with the rest of your message, you're probably using the right tone.
I thought that was pretty effective at explaining tone. And I challenge you to go back to your next whatever staff meeting or what have you and practice the whole "you dummy" thing, because it's memorable. People will remember that. And what we practice, we get better at. So don't be a dummy. The next is body language. And it was very fascinating to me when I first learned how prevalent, how powerful body language is in our communication with other people. I mean, it is the gateway to our emotions. And there's 6 basic emotions: sadness, happiness, what are they? Fear, anger, disgust, surprise, I think. Anyways, body language is extremely fascinating to me. And most of us totally miss out when we're doing it poorly, but it has a huge impact on what we do. And it can be intentional or unintentional, which I find interesting. I have a super expressive face, so I'm not a good poker player because you could see in my eyes that I have a good hand and I can't help but smile. Not all of us have a poker face. The same holds true when I think something stupid. I accidentally roll my eyes, or I'll go, and I didn't mean to huff out loud, but I do. And I have to be super cognizant of what I am saying with my body all the time. I mean, whether you're working in the field or walking a customer through the kennels looking for a lost pet, doesn't matter what your interaction is, your body is talking when your mouth isn't. And I think simply being aware of that, again, lots of games you could be playing at your shelter, or even pointing things out to each other at work in a very helpful, friendly way, so that you're all using the same body language. and I don't want to offend anybody with this, but I just couldn't help myself. I'm old, and what are they going to do? Fire me? I guess they could. But I did not know that RBF was actually a real thing. It's like a condition. I mean, it's a facial expression that unintentionally creates the impression that you're angry or annoyed or irritated for some reason. And there's people that have this and they can't control themselves. I share this because, yes.
Read that top line for us. That bar is covering it.
Oh, smiling gives you wrinkles. I don't know how to get rid of that little bar. Does anybody know how to do that? I can't make it go away. Anyway, smiling gives you wrinkles. I won't read the rest. You can read it for yourself. Anyways, your eyes are the window to your soul. And our eyes have a lot of impact on our customers and that exchange. There's 3 really critical components of body language. It's eye contact, posture, and physical space. You have to keep those things in mind and practice them. Some people call them the 3 Ps, like posture, position, proximity. When I think of the Ps, I think of popcorn, Pepsi, and plenty of ice cream. So you have to come up with whatever analogy or acronym helps you remember. But if you struggle in this area, you have to practice smiling at people. It doesn't come naturally for everybody. Again, something else to practice at work. We all have that RBF person that we work with, and they're not doing it on purpose most of the time. Oh, good Lord God Almighty. How come I'm not advancing again? Jill, there we go. It's working. Calm down. We're okay. Anyways, there's only supposed to be 6 basic emotions, but I found this illustration on the internet, and this is far more exemplifies far greater things are facial expressions. Like I can go from angry to rage really quickly, right? You all know happiness can become giddiness. Our faces tell a story, and we need to be really cognizant of that. And I always take this back, and I would urge you to take this back to your whole team. And if a coworker is sitting there with a look on their face that says, I just ate dog shit, that is when you owe it to them to tell them, to save them from getting in trouble. You need to be brave. We need to help each other. We need to take care of each other. Step in, develop the code word. I don't care what it is. Anything to bring it back to a place that keeps everyone out of trouble, and most of all, doesn't harm the customer. We've got to do it together, though. And listening is one of those things, the most important skill you can have, I think, has a huge impact on your effectiveness, not just at work, but also in relationships with other people. I mean, we listen so we can get information, so that we can understand, so we can have fun, so we can learn. But we don't teach, in this country anyway, we don't teach children how to listen. For the most part, the curriculum is read this paragraph, read this book, and then take this written test and answer these questions, instead of listen to this story and then verbally repeat or verbally answer the questions. With that said, we do a ton of listening in this country, podcasts, all that stuff, but we're terrible at remembering what we heard. The scientists say that we remember 25 to 50% of what we hear. So that means when you're talking to your boss, your kids, your spouse, your customer, or whatever, for 10 minutes, they only heard 5 minutes of that conversation at best. It takes practice. Listening really takes practice. And you have to work on improving it intentionally. For example, turn on talk radio for 10 minutes a day and write down what you hear. You'll be so surprised, but we'll also help you become a better listener. Again, another team project that you can do at work to emphasize the importance of really listening, because people will tell you probably everything you need to know in the first 3 or 4 sentences, but we're not listening. And then we ask them again what they just told us, and that increases customer dissatisfaction. I would be remiss, I have to switch gears a little bit here, if I didn't talk a bit about unconscious bias. It is a thing. It's plagued our industry, in my opinion. We have been a very judgy industry. I don't think we've done it on purpose. We learn bias from our parents, from the TV, from our friends. I was talking to a guy yesterday, as a matter of fact, who adamantly opposes free adoptions. And I asked him, I said, so I asked him why, basically. And here's what he said. He says, well, it all depends where it is. If it's a wealthy area, then it's okay. But if it's a poor area and there's a lot of crime, then absolutely not. So I said, so you're telling me that poor people who live in higher crime areas aren't good pet owners? He looked me square in the eye and he said, yep, pretty much. And this is someone who works in our industry, someone who's familiar with shelters across the country. He admitted he was being biased, but was unwilling to change his stance on it. But at least he acknowledged it. We all have it. We all do it. It happens in the back of your head without your understanding, without your knowledge. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that it happens, it exists, and that we owe it to everyone that we work with and live with in our communities to try and reframe it. This is a great book. I highly recommend. Unconscious Bias, Leader's Guide. Let's move on. So when I was brand new at Front Street, I entered the animal welfare industry with zero background, did not know what I was doing. This guy walks in, and on this particular day, I was learning how to do walkthroughs for lost animals. And this guy walks in, and this is really not him, but in my mind, this is what he looked like. Okay. He fills out the little form. I never look at it. I have no idea what kind of animal he's looking for. And I'm walking him through the shelters. And in my mind, this is the dog that he's looking for. Some kind of big pity-headed thing. Okay. I know some of you already did that. You did it with me. And then we get to the kennels. He's crying. There's a dog screaming. And I look in the cage, and this kind of dog was exactly what he was looking for. And it was at that moment, I really had an epiphany, because I was being a super judgmental, middle-aged white woman. And I was embarrassed in my own head. I don't think he had any idea what I was thinking. But that's why I talk about implicit bias. We need to be aware of those things that trigger us. I saw this recently, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember for the life of me who said it, but it just struck me as a truth. When I heard it, it felt like kind of like getting slapped in the face, because the truth of it stings, I think. And for the past couple of years, our industry, we're going through kind of a reckoning, and we've admitted that our practices and our policies might be harmful to people. And so I think many of us are re-examining what we're doing. For example, who we allow to adopt, who we write citations to, and whom we don't. I mean, it's a really exciting time to be in animal welfare, but it's also a little bit scary too. And it's these customer conversations that are so hard, and there's like a gajillion of them we could talk about, but I'm only going to touch on a couple of them. So for example, old lady walks in, she needs help. Her cat got hit by a car. She can't afford the bill. It's $4,200. She's begging for your help. You're at the intake, counter, or whatever you call reception, or whatever you call your intake place. And she says, what am I supposed to do? And that's my cat, by the way, Kit. And I remember, and I still hear this, if you can't afford an animal, maybe you shouldn't have one. That is still a prevalent thought across the United States. Maybe not in California, but it is where I am. And it's, I live in rural America now. And I saw this recently too, from Brene Brown. We don't need, in the midst of someone's struggle, shaming them for being human. And that kind of is what I think of when I think of this situation. But again, rhetorically, how many of you have an extra $4,200 sitting around that you can easily spend on your cat? Most of you don't. So what do we do? Here's this old lady with her cat. Number one, first of all, be a human being. It's okay to say, I'm so sorry that this happened to you and your cat. I can only imagine how you're feeling, what you're going through. And then secondly, the rules of your respective shelters are all different. And we're all vastly different, well, sometimes being exactly the same. Know what your rules are. Know what your resources are. Do you have an angel fund? Is there a local vet that you partner with? And maybe the answer is going to be no. Maybe that cat will end up getting euthanized. But how you treat this person through the course of that conversation will determine if they walk away feeling that kindness and compassion were dealt to them, even in a terrible situation. So regardless of what your rules are, you have to be a decent human being first. And this takes practice. There is no policy and procedure that helps a brand new person who starts working at the shelter know how to have these conversations. And I think that's our biggest problem. We can teach someone the rules, the black and the white, but this is the rainbow of what we do. And learning can only be obtained through practicing these conversations with each other. I just threw that in there because it makes me laugh. We all work with that one person who you never know who's coming to work that day. I have no advice for how to fix them. What about returns? Oh, good Lord. That's another one. Hold on a second. Let me get to my right notes here. So I won't tell you which shelter this is, but I was in the shelter of a lobby a few weeks ago, and a man came in to say that he needed to return his dog that he adopted 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks, 21 days. And I just wanted to shake the lady at the counter. Oh my God, she was a robot. And I don't think it was her fault. I really think nobody trained her. Her human skills were just, well, I don't think she had very many. And the guy was upset. I mean, like he was almost teary. He was in his 60s, which sounds really old to some of you. It sounds decent to me because I'm 60. But she just couldn't muster any kind of empathy for him. And he was really struggling with the decision to bring the dog back. And it was pure business, pure forms, no conversation, no reassurance, no letting him know that we appreciate that he tried. No explaining that the information he can give us now about this dog will help us find the right home for this dog. Nothing. And I don't blame that kid behind the counter. I don't, but I do blame her boss. I mean, we need to do better as an industry. Again, we need to practice these conversations, and we need to help our colleagues understand why these moments are so important. I mean, I hope all of you believe that returns aren't the spawn of the devil. I mean, I hope no one on this webinar, don't raise your hand, would put this adopter on a do not adopt list because they returned a dog. I hope that you'll go back to your respective shelters and have some really candid conversations about how to talk to people in these situations. How do we get the best information from them to make the best placements in the future? And how do we lift people up? This poor guy, she never said, we will help you find a dog that's more suitable to your home. These people don't just adopt from us, they donate to us. They volunteer for us. And at a minimum, they talk about us to the other people in their lives. And all of that matters. These are tiny little human interactions that we take for granted. But it is customer service, and it could be the difference between our failure and our success. And you can't see the top of this, so it says, what about testicle talk? We never teach new employees how to talk about testicles and why dogs don't need them. I love this video. Oops, so here we go.
And the coolest cat of them all. Hip spectacles, no testicles. That's right. He lost his pair of balls. Other cats, they make baby. With him, there's no yes or maybe. Who's your daddy? Not me. No, it's not me. He's Scooter, the neuter cat.
Find low-cost spay and neuter options at GiveThem10.org.
I remember some of the hardest conversations I had with customers were around testicles and why animals really don't need them. And I always had a hard time keeping a straight face when I was called to the front counter to talk to somebody redeeming their dog that was refusing to get them fixed. You all have had that conversation, or you've heard somebody having it. And I use this as an example because it's awkward, right? And so one time I had this guy at the counter, and the staff couldn't handle him, so they came and got me. And so I channeled my inner Holly. And I'm not recommending this, but I told this guy that his dog didn't have thumbs, and he really didn't need his testicles. It was probably not my best moment. I'm not proud of it, but I did say it so nicely and so sincerely. There was a lobby full of people out there, and they just all started laughing. Which reminds me, don't forget to laugh. Everything we do is not fraught with pain and emotions. You have to have levity to hold on to your humanity. And again, I'm not an expert at testicle talk, but I'm also not going to froth at the mouth if somebody objects to spaying or neutering their pet. You lay out the options, you don't pass any judgment, and you go on to the next crazy situation. Let it go. Don't cling to the belief that there's only one way of doing things. And if any of you are not familiar with Scooter, you can Google him. He has several other videos. He's out of the Cincinnati area. It's an amazing spay and neuter campaign. Has anybody ever talked to this lady? Oh my God. So this, in my mind, this is Mrs. DeCitas. She used to call 911 in the 80s about 300 times a day, it felt like. These are the people that call. They have a lot of complaints. They don't really have a real complaint. They're incredibly difficult to get off the phone. They don't really need anything, but somehow they manage to catch your hair on fire every time you get them on the phone or every time they come into the lobby. How do we train people to handle ladies like Mrs. DeCitas? We don't have a policy or procedure for that. So you got to find what uniquely works for you. And what I found for me was after a couple of minutes with Mrs. DeCitas, I would just tell her, gosh, I wish I could talk to you all day long. But unfortunately, we have, 75 other phones ringing or animals to save, and just say it with such niceness and with such compassion that typically that worked. Because like a word of advice with someone like this, never tell her to calm down. Telling an old angry lady to calm down is like effective as baptizing a cat. Don't try that. But as a team, how do you handle those regulars, the people that drive you nuts? Come up with a script that everybody is comfortable using so that doesn't harm that person, but also doesn't harm the reputation of your organization. And I'm back with Ted Lasso again. Hopefully some of you are familiar with when Ted says, do you know what the happiest animal in the world is? It's a goldfish, because it's got a 10-second memory. Be a goldfish. So many times, somebody or some situation upsets us at work that all we can do for the rest of the stinking day is talk to each and every one of our colleagues about that horrible situation. This is where you need to be a goldfish and let it go. You can think about it for 10 or 15 minutes and let it go. If you need to talk to somebody about it, talk to one person about it, because your angst and frustration with that situation is yours. But by vomiting it out ad nauseum for the rest of the day and maybe tomorrow is simply toxifying the workplace. None of your coworkers experience this person, and they don't need to be upset by them. Again, another conversation we have with our teams. What about volunteers? This is one of my favorite pictures, and it's Pride Month, so I decided to use it. This was Pride 2017. I loved it. It was one of my most favorite things at Front Street. Everybody in this picture is a volunteer. And there's me laying on the ground like a model, but I'm not. Anyway, I hope that you agree with me. Volunteers are a key component to successful life saving. But there's two things to remember about volunteers. When you see one at your shelter, say hello. Thank you so much for coming in today, Mary. I appreciate it. Every single time, every single day. They may get sick of it, but it makes them feel like they're part of a bigger, more important mission. People need to feel important. And number two is give your volunteers the same training and customer service expectation you give to your paid staff. I don't know about your organization, but I can only speak about what happened at Front Street. Sometimes there were more volunteers milling about than paid staff. These people were incredibly powerful. Again, they are adopters too, and donors and helpers and conveyors of information. A lot of them are smarter than you and I. Most of them are more educated than you and I. Some of them have experience running businesses. Lots of them are connected to influential people with more decimal points in their checkbooks. Take care of your volunteers, hold them accountable, and treat them with respect, going back to the person you love the most in life itself. I'm just going to throw in a little bit of Mr. Rogers because I'm a big fan. Like Elton, the motorcycle cop, you can still be kind and give someone a ticket. There's a friend of mine, Mike Wheeler. Some of you may know him. He's the shelter director in Cabot, Arkansas, and he tells this really great story about his grandfather. His grandfather said something like, be so kind that you can tell someone to go to hell and they'll look forward to the trip. That's what kind of makes me think about Elton. I always have to throw in a cartoon. I'm trying to make sure that we have a few moments for questions. Dog humor, and it's, return to owner. Okay, I know you're all laughing. In closing, we need to have more conversations like this, first of all, and I can't wait to do it in person. Remember the person you love the most in the entire world and what your wish for them might be. I want you to go out and deliver that to the people that you come into contact with. And I don't mean just at work. I want you to spend some time after this session thinking about your style. I mean, if you struggle with customer service, that's okay. Some of us do. Find someone you work with that seems to be good at it and ask them for help. Go back to work and create some fun team exercises that keeps the topic of customer service on everyone's radar all the time. Celebrate those positive letters. Don't be like Elton's boss and not ever tell him he has 25 million commendations. Whether it's an email or a donation that comes with a note that says, gosh, Joe was such a great officer when he picked up the dead dog at the side of the road, whatever. You have to put customer service on every single agenda, full staff meetings, senior supervisor meetings. It's something that we have to talk about, that we have to focus on, that we have to practice. We have to know what's going well, and we have to improve in the areas where maybe it's not. Setting some personal goals, kind of like the accident goal, like we have not had any work-related accidents in 3,700 days. Well, we haven't had any customer complaints in 3,700 days. How about making that a mantra instead? And put up signs around work. They mean those secret words, those secret codes that remind everybody what a priority is, both in the front of the house and in the back of the house. If your reputation in the community is exceptional and you are known for remarkable customer service at your shelter, when you do screw up, forgiveness is going to come a lot more readily than if you do not provide great customer service to the people you come into contact with. This is me. If you want to have further conversations about customer service, I'd love to do that. Let me figure out how to get out of here and hold on. I'm back. Okay. How'd we do, Jill? It is 11:53.
Nice job. Great timing, great presentation. I asked everyone to use the Q&A feature if they have any questions, and it looks like we've got a few rolling in. If you want to take a look at those, Gina.
Okay, hold on. Somebody loved Ted Lasso. They would like, I'll give you a PDF of the presentation, and Jill said she would post the recording.
You're looking at the chat. Their Q&A is the other button.
Oh, I'm way over there. Sorry.
All right.
I do like the chat though. Any suggestions on a code word? Oh, I like that. Or what somewhat scripted explanation for dispatchers to take over a call. Well, what we used to do at 911 anyway was tell somebody they had an emergency call and take over for them. And they knew that if someone tried to take over their call for them, they were going down the rabbit hole. But you have to have those conversations in advance. And a code word can be whatever you want it to be. It could be unicorn for all I care, but a word that's memorable to everybody, and you never use it unless it's used for that specific situation. Lisa asked, how do we manage to still provide quality customer service when we don't have enough time to give each customer the full attention they deserve? Well, you give them quality customer service in the amount of time that you have to give them. And you be honest, I think. Like any other industry, we are a little bit short-staffed today. I don't want to be quick with you. I want to be able to get you what you need, but I'm going to have to move on quickly. So are you ready? Anything to just be honest, be transparent, tell the truth. My favorite restaurant here in town, it takes an hour to get my food. I know that. They're short, and I accept that, but it's telling the truth up front.
One did come in the chat. Are there any resources you know of that pertain to customer service when dealing with compassion fatigue?
Say that again, Jill.
Are there any resources you know of that pertain to customer service when dealing with compassion fatigue?
Well, you know what? Hillary Hager and I have been having some conversations on another project. She's the compassion fatigue expert. I think I'll reach out to her and put our heads together and see if she can make a recommendation, because I don't know if I'm understanding the question correctly. Yeah, you get compassion fatigue by giving too much customer service all the time. Is that the question, do you think, Jill?
I'm not sure. Oh, David said, he said yes.
Devin says yes. Yeah, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. That's why a lot of people go home and drink, or that's why a lot of us eat too much or smoke too many cigarettes at break time. And there has to be a balance between your work life and your home life. And please don't have all of your friends be animal people. You've got to separate yourself from the work. And we had the same problem at 911. I mean, you listen to the worst things ever that could possibly happen to human beings. Like, you know, that caller, my baby's dead, or I just shot my wife, all those things. And you have to be able to disassociate yourself from that, but still provide people with incredible service, because that is what we signed up to do. And we owe it to the other person on the receiving end. But you've got to take care of yourself in order to balance out the pain with the good things in life. And also too, focus on that great customer. We never ruminate about the person who just gushes over how well we treated them and then writes a check for $100 as a donation. We don't tell everybody about that person. So shift your thinking, reprogram your brain to focus more on the great people that you deal with in the course of a day, because it's really a small percentage that are jerks.
Did you see that one that came in under Q&A?
I found exercise a helpful outlet. Oh, I'm in the wrong place now. I'm back on the chat. Oh, Max, I think this helps with compassion fatigue, Parsley Health. Oh, everybody click on that and read it when we're done.
We'll have to put that into the chat so they can see it. But the other one was about handling clients who appear to be under the influence of drugs.
Correct. And we did that a lot. We had that problem a lot in Sacramento. It is okay to, you don't have to adopt to somebody that's under the influence of drugs or under the influence of alcohol. That is when hopefully you will have a plan in place with your supervisors, managers, and directors on how to handle, what is your organization? How do they want those situations handled? And don't take it upon yourself to escort somebody out. But that is a pre-conversation that whoever the big boss is, and you could be government or you could be nonprofit, but you need a plan in advance on how to handle those. Sometimes it's just call the police and wait it out, but that's entirely up to you.
And did you see there's another one asking if NACA offers peer support groups?
Well, I know that, I don't know if NACA does, but we can ask Jerica, but I know in Sacramento, we started a peer support program at Front Street. Police departments and fire departments have them. If you are a government agency, reach out to your sheriff or police and ask them about their chaplaincy program. It's an amazing opportunity for animals. I don't know if Philip or anybody from Front Street's on the call, but I'm presuming that program continued after I retired. But peer support groups are amazing in this industry.
Gina, can you give a little bit more about when there's no resources, for that example of the $4,200 vet bill, how to have that conversation? Maybe the answer is euthanasia. That's one we come across a lot. How do you explain that? And should you?
How do you explain it to the lady with the cat, Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, you just as honestly as you can. As much as I wish I could cure your cat and treat it and take care of it and give it back to you, that's just not within our ability. What are the resources? Do you have a friend? Is there a relative? Is there a neighbor? I hate credit care, but is that an option? Does the shelter have a relationship with a vet? We do here in Hamilton, where I live. Nobody knows it, but Dr. Joe will do the surgery for free. Maybe your shelter does have an angel fund, but if the answer is no, it's simply no. And I'm so sorry. I am really, really sorry. We never want to re-victimize somebody either in the process. You shouldn't have let your cat out, you idiot, right? And I think Kathy, those conversations have to be practiced, and we don't do that. when we hire new folks. We do not sit down and have those tear-jerking moments. I know all of you at some point have shed a tear with a customer at some point along the way in your career. I've hugged complete strangers in this business that I never did in any other job. So we have to be human.
So we're going to call this a wrap, but I do want to encourage you to reach out to me if you'd like some additional customer service training, or we want to talk about how to have conversations around particular topics. Gina might be open to coming back and doing that for us. So you can email me at jill@calanimals.org. But we're going to call it a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Gina. And everyone, we're going to post this recording on our website so you can watch it again or share it with your colleagues. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Gina.